Hey guys, Joe Simons here, the host of the Salt Strong Fishing Podcast, and I have some huge news about our private insider club, in particular the community. The top two questions we get about the community are, one, from people who aren't insider members yet that say, gosh, guys, I'd love to at least just test it out and get in the community and see what this is all about before I sign up. And from current insider members who want to refer to their friends, are like, man, I got so-and-so I want to refer, and even though I know you guys have a 365-day, 100% money-back guarantee, I'd love just to get them in the community, see how helpful it is so they can get an idea of the kind of people in there and the kind of help and the kind of value you have. And so we said, you know what, we'll do it. We'll create a free basic membership, like no credit card required. Just giving you our best, putting our best foot forward to let you go in there and see what it's all about. It is available right now. This is a limited time deal. We're going to let anyone who wants to get in, anyone who wants to see behind the scenes of our private community. You will not get access to the discounts, and you not get access to some of our super, super exclusive stuff, but the entire community is wide open to you. We would love to have you in there. You can go learn more. It's saltstrong.com/pricing. Or just go to saltstrong.com and say join the club, and you'll now see a free version where you can get in there and basically have a free trial to see everything that you want in our private community. You're going to be blown away with how helpful people are and how many fishing reports are in there and how many new reports are going up every single hour. Can't wait to see you in there. That's www.saltstrong.com/pricing. Now, here's the episode.
This fishing, it's in my soul.
Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back again. This is going to be a fun one. We've got a little panel here, and John Liebler, one of our insider members, volunteers at a place called ORCA, aka Team ORCA, who's doing some really, really, really cool stuff in the Indian River Lagoon. I started watching some of the videos on Facebook, and I'm looking at this pollution mapping, right, where you actually just envision seeing a map of Indian River Lagoon, and you see it based on colors about how bad the pollution is, and really using science and technology, not just finger pointing, and coming up with some pretty awesome and exciting solutions. So we got Bridget and Dr. Edie herself, and of course Justin, who is our resident nerd fisherman / marine, wanna-be marine biologist. And ladies, first and foremost, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Excited to be here.
I'm pumped. So ORCA, where did you come up with the name? What does it mean? What's the purpose?
So ORCA is the Ocean Research and Conservation Association. I helped found it in 2005. I spent my career as a deep sea biologist studying bioluminescence, hunting down giant squid, doing all kinds of cool things. And there were a couple reports that came out about the deteriorating state of the ocean about the same time that Harbor Branch Oceanographic was shutting down their submersible program. So I was looking to move on, but I felt like I really wanted to start giving back to the ocean. And estuaries are a tiny, tiny percentage of the surface area of the ocean, but they are such a huge portion of the health of the ocean because they're a nursery for so many open ocean animals. And to see what was once the most biologically diverse estuary in the United States, or so it claimed anyway, collapsing right before my very eyes, I felt like this was where I wanted to concentrate my efforts. So we originally started out developing water quality monitors called Kilroys. And then we've greatly expanded our efforts at other ways of trying to track where the pollution is coming from. And our focus is on using facts to drive change.
I love it. And she's very humble, but quite the celebrity. I mean, TED Talk and all kinds of cool stuff. I read the whole bio and started going down this rabbit trail of all the stuff you've done. I was like, holy smokes. So cool. So you could have picked anywhere, and you said Indian River Lagoon, like that is the main focus right now, to be clear, or do you
it is. When we started ORCA, we actually incorporated in New York, and we were looking at estuaries in general, But as we saw things getting worse and worse here, we decided just to focus our efforts in our own backyard.
Got it. And so what are you guys looking for? I teased this whole pollution mapping. What is the goal when you guys are going to raise money and getting grants and all this stuff? What are you looking for?
So our tagline is mapping pollution, finding solutions. And, you've got to figure out where the pollution is coming from. The worse it gets, the more you see people coming out with downstream solutions, which are no solution at all. We have to figure out where the pollution is coming from and get it stopped at its source. And we really, really try to avoid finger pointing because it's counterproductive. And we've got to understand that we're all polluters. We just have to figure out how to live together in this ecosystem to everybody's benefit.
I love it. Gosh, wow. It sounds so simple, Justin, not pointing fingers and actually coming up with science-based solutions.
Well, no, I mean, just getting to the root of things is the logic here.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. I've made the statement before that critics are going to be critics, but oftentimes they fail at providing a solution to whatever they're criticizing that actually addresses the core of the problem instead of a short-term solution to a long-term problem. So I'm fascinated that that's the core focus about how you go about finding out, these pollution maps and sourcing exactly where this is stemming from to figure out what is exactly causing that and how do we mitigate it.
Exactly.
I saw the one. It was brief. I was like dying to see more, and I think if you guys can focus on that and show that to the public, it's so powerful. But you kind of zoomed in on this one area on the map, and so once again, imagine a map of a pretty big area of Indian River Lagoon, and you see different colors, just like you would on any kind of radar or anything like that. And it's like really red in this one area. It was like a canal. And I assume it was from people fertilizing and putting a lot of pollutants in the water in this one canal. And it was like hot red, like compared to everything else. And it was like, tough to kind of ignore that when, the question is, how do you get that? Like, how did you know that was the red hot area or areas? What are you guys doing to get these samples, and how often do you sample, et cetera?
So for the kind of map you're talking about, where it looks like a weather map where red is hot and blue is cold, only red is the pollution and blue is clean. And we go out and we take sediment samples, and we do a lot of sampling at different locations. And then we create these gradient maps based on what we measure in the sediment: total nitrogen, total phosphorus. We look at sulfur, we look at heavy metals, we've got a whole lot of different layers to these maps. The one I think you're talking about was nitrogen. And that's what we've seen in a lot of places where there's just a bright red in these canal systems. And then just across the way, you can have mangrove shoreline, and it's blue. It's completely clean. That particular one is a community that's so like a lot of the landscaping that's done all up and down the Indian River Lagoon, where everybody gets a deep water dock. So they have a bulkhead and these sloping grass lawns right down to the edge of that bulkhead. So all of the grass clippings and all of the fertilizer comes off. What's interesting about that particular one is it's not on septic. So it's, it looks like most of it has to be coming from the grass clippings, or it could be coming from reused water. But we've tested in a bunch of places and found that the reused water isn't the source of the nitrogen. So one of the things that we've been campaigning for recently is how much we could clean up the Indian River Lagoon with just one simple trick, which would be to re-landscape along the shoreline. Wherever possible, put in living shorelines like mangroves. But if you can't do that, if you put in a buffered shoreline, we just did a demonstration project down in Stewart with the city of Stewart and Shepherd Park, where we re-landscaped that park with swales and deep-rooted native plants. And the amount of phosphate coming off was reduced just astonishingly. I want another year of data to really believe it's true, but if it's as good as it seems on the first blush, we just need to be doing this everywhere. And it's not a big deal to do. A lot of places up north around Chesapeake Bay, for example, they've been mandating buffered shorelines for the agriculture as well as for homeowners for a long time. Makes a huge difference. And it's something we could do right away.
And we actually have one of our pollution mapping pictures shows just how much of a difference these planted shorelines can make. There's an image of a residential area, like you mentioned, that's full of canals that shows bright, bright red. And right north of it is a golf course. And this golf course is part of, I believe it's the Audubon Society, where they have this buffered shoreline lining it, and it's blue. And we didn't expect that from a golf course where they're regularly fertilizing to get that green grass. So it was a huge find and really exciting to be able to share just the impact of these shorelines.
And this could be as simple in terms of trying to envision this while you're listening. Instead of just having grass that goes all the way to the shoreline or a seawall, imagine like the last 3 feet are like shells with some plants, right? I mean, is that
my husband and I did that on our property. We had a grass lawn right down to the edge of the seawall, and we just changed it to a swale with native plants. So we have sunshine mimosa, perennial peanut, and muley grass. It looks beautiful.
Yeah, I'm sure it looks beautiful. Yeah.
And it absorbs all of the runoff. We took it even one step further. We put in a French drain underneath. We collect every bit of water that comes off our property and put it in a tank for irrigation. But that's extreme. Just to put in a swale and deep-rooted plants along the edge of the seawall would make a huge difference. They did that in the moorings in Vero Beach. And it looks really lovely. And it really does help a lot because it keeps the grass clippings from going into the water. It absorbs the nutrients before they swoosh off into the water. It's something we can all be doing. And it can even be done inland. People have, sometimes they call them lagoon gardens, where you just a rain garden that collects the water. Because what you want to do is slow the water down. Anything we can do to slow the flow. Everything that was done to Florida in the early days of settlement was about getting the water off the land as quickly as possible to make it useful for agriculture and for housing. Yep. And that's undone all of nature's good filtration process. So what we want to do is just slow the flow every possible way we can so the water can percolate slowly back down into the aquifer, recharge the aquifer, and get cleaned up along the way.
I saw one thing, what did you call it? Black mayonnaise, depending on where you're from. But the muck, right? And Justin, you fished in the lagoon for multiple decades. My brother used to live there in Indian Atlantic and Melbourne for a while. And, we grew up fishing there. And, now we go back and it's night and day. I mean, seagrass is dead in places that it used to be super healthy. And there was a lot of just beautiful white sand. You could see the bottom. And now you see muck, not everywhere, but in a lot of places. And you talked about the grass clippings again there. It's come up multiple times. Talk about this muck, because we've all seen it. We all think I've heard a lot of different hypotheses on it, but tell us about this muck that seems to be taking over a lot of the areas there in the lagoon.
So there's places that it's as much as 8 to 10 feet deep.
What?
And it's just smothering the life on the bottom of the lagoon. It really does feel like black mayonnaise, only it smells sulfurous. It's nasty stuff. Mm-hmm. It's smothering the life. And a lot of it turns out to be clay and silt. That's why it has that mayonnaise feeling. And this is from work done by John Treffery up at Florida Institute of Technology. He analyzed the muck and discovered a large percentage of it is clay, which I'm no geologist, but I've been told that clay doesn't belong here geologically. And Treffery seemed to indicate that it was probably coming from the landfill and the sod. A lot of sod, they put clay in it to be able to roll it out. The grass that they lay down like a carpet. Yep. So all of that clay comes off and the silt, and that ends up holding on to the nutrients and the pollutants. And so, all of this stuff we've done to create our own little front yard, backyard heaven is really been messing with the lagoon a lot more than people realize. And I think it's an education issue. If we could just make people more aware of how much of an impact that's having, and that there are things that they can be doing that would make a difference. That's why, we've been focusing so much on citizen science, like the project that Bridget's here to talk about today with the fishing, to figure out how these toxins are getting into our ecosystem and how they're getting into our fish.
Yeah, let's talk about that. What's your role? Like, what are you doing? How long have you been doing it? And what gets you excited on a day-to-day basis?
Well, every day is a little different. I never know what I'm gonna walk into when I come into the office. But I currently oversee our One Health Fish Monitoring Project. It's one of 5 citizen science projects that we have here at ORCA. And it really takes hold of this One Health philosophy, which is the idea that you and I are affected by the animals and the planet. And the actions that we have also affect them as well. And so we really do this through our Kilroys and our pollution mapping. We're able to identify different pollutants that are entering into the Indian River Lagoon. And using fishermen who are very helpful and willing to donate their fish, we're able to examine them for these potential pollutants. And then ultimately, we're able to look at and try and estimate the amount of exposure that we're being exposed to in these fish. So that's really the goal of this project.
Cool. Do you mind telling everyone what a Kilroy is? I'm willing to bet a lot of our anglers and boaters have seen them before. Tell it, and we'll try to get a picture up there when we edit this. Tell us what it is and what it's doing.
So it's a real-time water quality monitoring system. Our goal in building the Kilroys was to create something less expensive and smaller so that they could go up canals so that we could look at, the major inputs to the lagoon. They are 2/3 the cost and half the size of comparable systems. But you're still talking about $80,000 for one installation and $30,000 to $35,000 a year in real costs for maintenance, because you just put high-tech equipment in seawater. It takes lots of tender love and care. We have a very devoted team, but they're always just struggling to keep those things healthy and clean. And we appreciate the fishermen that look out for them for us.
And you'll see them where do you guys put them on? Channel markers and all kinds of different?
Existing channel markers and dock pilings. We have to get permits to put them out there. So there's a solar panel at the top. There's a small box that is Kilroy's Voice that is basically cell phone technology. So all of that real-time data is fed to our website. If you go to teamorca.org and you click on the live feed, all of that data is available for free to anyone, anytime. You can look at it in real time, or you can plot the data over time. And then we have a sensor array underwater, and then a larger box, which has a pump that pulls the water up into it to measure for nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus. It measures temperature, salinity, pH, dissolved oxygen, oxygen reduction potential, turbidity. I'm leaving pH. I'm leaving stuff out, I'm sure. But anyway, a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And these are all over the place.
We have 18 now. We had as many as 25 at one time, and then the funding got cut back, but it's gradually been being brought back so most of that comes from the state, but some of it from individual counties.
If I can interject, I have experience with Hawk and YSI units for measuring all of these parameters individually. And just the portable units are thousands of dollars. So to implement 18 of these, it is an investment. And to read it in real time, I mean, these diodes, they're sensitive. The maintenance, I'm sure, is very labor intensive to go and check on that constantly. So that's incredible that that's accessible to us. And I would say I don't think a lot of people realize kind of what goes into putting this kind of unit together to read all that information. Some of these things take, several minutes and mixing and time and waiting to get general readings. But the fact that it's just going 24/7 for someone to know, it's really incredible. It's a very valuable resource.
You knew all about the Kilroys, didn't you, Justin?
Anybody who's tried to keep their boat clean in the water knows about biofouling. Well, it just seems to be 10 times worse when you're talking about delicate electronic gear.
Can only imagine. Talk about Living Shorelines too. That was another, and you guys, we'll put a link to all the videos. I love the little, what is it called? Oh, the ORCA Minute. and you guys had one where you talked about Kilroy's and one with Living Shorelines. Talk about some of the Living Shorelines you guys have done in the lagoon.
We had a nice project that was funded by Impact 100, where we partnered with the Indian River Land Trust. So they had land that they had purchased to protect, but they had erosion problems in certain places, and so we worked with volunteers and high school students to create these living shorelines where they were replanted, and then we're monitoring them so that we know how much of an impact that living shoreline actually has. You've been involved in some of the living shoreline projects, Bridget. You want
to? And tell everyone, what is a living shoreline? Where would they see that?
So a living shoreline is going to be kind of that interface between the water and your main dry land. Really what constitutes a living shoreline is the fact that it's full of mangroves, your red, white, and black mangroves. We've got a lot of spartina grasses, which are really these tall, beautiful grasses that kind of flow in the wind. They're really popular estuary and marsh grasses. And we also, what makes living shorelines different than buffered shorelines is our use of breakwaters. So our breakwaters in particular are made of a coquina shell, which is made of lime and kind of helps to combat acidification. So we really planned that out ahead of time to make sure that everything we were putting in the water was going to be best suited for our lagoon.
Love it. I don't think we ever really addressed it. Is the ultimate goal with ORCA to find out where the problem is and arrest everyone, or is it to reverse the damage and make it back like the good old days? Or tell us the ultimate goal and kind of some of the findings too. What is your gut telling us that you guys are going to be able to do with all this?
Well, it's kind of incorporated in our tagline, which is mapping pollution, finding solutions. We want to work with the community to find solutions that work for all of us. If in one place you're finding that agriculture is a big part of the input, you can't get rid of agriculture. You want to eat, right? But up in Chesapeake Bay, they started instituting forest buffer zones along the edge of the ag community properties, and it made a big difference in terms of the amount of runoff. So, I mean, there's different solutions for different parts of the community, but we need to figure out what those problems are and clearly define them for the public so they know where they should be putting their money in order to make the biggest impact on the lagoon in the shortest period of time.
And what's the prelim data saying so far? Do you guys have anything you guys can share?
Well, the thing that's been most striking to me is this impact of stormwater runoff. All of everything that was done to make the water come off the land fast is part of what's impacting us. So I used to talk to people about the different species of nitrogen, oxidized versus reduced, and different types of phosphate and different sources. And eyes just glaze over. You lose them. They don't want to hear it. But it all really does come down to being carried into the lagoon by stormwater. And anything we do to slow down that flow allows nature to do a lot of the repair work for us and the cleanup for us. And so if we can just focus on that as the message that we want to get out there, it would start having an impact. Clearly, we want to get rid of biosolids being spread near waterfront property. We need more advanced wastewater treatment. There's a whole slew of things that we can be doing, but I think, if in the category that most people are thinking in, something like living shorelines and buffered shorelines is something they can get behind.
And what about that muck? What breaks that down? How does that go away?
It doesn't, unfortunately. You end up having to dredge it, but that's what they're doing up in Brevard now. And I recently had an interaction with one of the engineers up there because I had some concerns about, a lot of dredging companies, they're just doing it to improve navigation. So they just do a channel down the center. but they're actually trying to do it up in Brevard to really make a difference for the environment. So they're doing a tapered type of dredging, which is kind of a new approach so that they can get more of that muck out, because it is a huge source of the pollution. And we're talking about decades worth that has built up.
Justin, I know you're dying to ask some questions.
No, I'm thinking about the muck. I mean, I encounter it every time I take the kayak out and go fish any backwater section of North Indian River Lagoon or Mosquito Lagoon, where there was otherwise tons of grass, and now there is this muck. And I mean, inherently, some of it had been present underneath grass. And I mean, it had kind of always been there, but it's not a natural means of filtration. It traps, these nutrients and organics that can't otherwise be removed. So it just sits there, and it's a vicious cycle of continuing to feed blooms. I'm sure if there's ever a heavy storm or a lot of wind in shallow water, that you get that turnover effect and all that sediment mixes, and then we get a strong north wind, and it just is a funnel down the river. It's kind of, I really don't know how to stop it either, but the dredging aspect is interesting. I immediately think of the dredging that's happening off the beach, south of Satellite Beach, but I don't think that's what you're referring to. I think you're referring to parts of North Indian River as well.
Right. When they have to deepen the canals, those are the kinds of dredge companies that come in, and they're used to dealing with muck. And so they, it's a muck removal system. But, if you just do it down the center, which is what they would normally do for navigational purposes, there's just all this up along the edge that slumps back down in. But, everything you just said is exactly right. That muck is feeding the algae blooms. And that's why we're, turning into this algae dominated system with toxic algae, which is now getting into our food web in a variety of different ways. The most concerning is in the fish themselves, because they're bioconcentrators. So, little plankton eat the algae, and then little fish eat the plankton, and then bigger fish eat the little fish. And once you get up to the kind of fish that people want to eat, it's bioaccumulated to the point where it could be very unhealthy. And so that's what Bridget's trying to do with this project, is we're trying to determine which parts of the lagoon have the most toxic fish, and which species of fish are accumulating the most toxins.
Well, I also think what's interesting to say, I mean, we talked about muck and the fact that it is silty and clay, and so it does have a lot of that turn up, releasing a lot of pollutants that it was once holding, which can further expose our fish. And so really the goal of this project as well is to be able to give data about the state of our fish so people can make informed decisions about how they want to proceed forward. So we're really looking at a number of different analyses, including microcystin, which is that toxin from blue-green algae. We're looking at microplastics. We're looking at heavy metals. We're also partnering with a number of different places like the University of Florida, FIT, Florida Institute of Technology, and Berry College. And we're able to look at Toxoplasma gondii, which is a parasite. It's the same parasite that's found in kitty litter, which is why pregnant women aren't supposed to be cleaning kitty litter. We are looking at PFAS, which is per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or better said and shortened to forever chemicals.
Gesundheit so there, geez.
That never disappear. They're in our environment forever. And these are commonly found on like non-stickware pans, as well as in a lot of what I think they used to use a lot of firefighting equipment was made of this PFAS chemical. And then we're also looking at pharmaceutical and controlled substances. So we're really making the most out of every fish that we get. We're trying not to let any part of the fish go to waste. And so we're constantly looking to expand what we can look at, as well as who we're partnering with. We want to get as much information as possible.
And as many fish as possible.
I'm hearing like all these things that essentially cause cancer. No big deal. So Bridget and Dr. Edie, knowing what you know and seeing all the data that you get to see and all the toxins, and would you eat, if Justin and I went fishing today and gave you a fish and said, eat it out of the Indian River Lagoon, would you eat any of the fish?
Well, I'll say as myself, I don't eat fish.
Assuming you
regardless
did.
of where it comes from, I think it depends. I think it's a personal decision. I think it depends on the fish that you're getting. I think it depends on the flavor and how you're preparing the fish. But I'd say it's up to you. I think it depends. It depends on a lot of different factors, including even season, keeping that in mind, what time of year you're collecting your fish.
Doctor?
I'm with Bridget on, I try to aim towards a plant-based diet for the sake of the planet.
Yep.
I will confess I'm not as good at it as she is. I do revert to chicken every now and then, but I stopped eating fish a long time ago just because of my concerns about overfishing and the way certain things are fished. The one fish I eat every now and then is mahi, because of they're caught individually on long lines, and they're very fast growing. They don't tend to have pollutant build up in them the way a lot of other fish do. One I can tell you should never ever eat is armored catfish.
Armored catfish.
Yeah, you would.
They're here.
You would think nobody would eat them when you see them, but apparently they're a delicacy in some cultures.
You talking about like brown hoplo?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're not native. They're an invasive species. Yeah. But my goodness, they're survivalists. I've been out there when we've had an dissolved oxygen plummet, and they're gulping air at the surface while everything else is going belly up. But they seem to be, they're bottom feeders, so it's not really that much of a surprise. But I will go as far as saying you should probably not be eating those.
Yeah, and the reason I asked, someone had forwarded over an article about that, and I don't remember who was behind it with the research. I'll have to go find it, but it was essentially alluding to the fact that you're flipping a coin when you're keeping and harvesting and eating fish out of a lot of places in Florida, including Indian River Lagoon. So
anything wild caught, you just don't have any idea what it may have been exposed to. So you're flipping a coin.
Yeah. Wow. Justin, what else you got?
Well, I'm not going to eat fish in the river, but my reason is more so along the lines of what we're talking about, and not so much, what's the word for it? Like, I wouldn't say anthropomorphic, but like a subjective view on, well, the water looks poor, so therefore I'm going to think that the fish are not healthy. No, I mean, understanding that the water is indeed actually not healthy, and that, as you mentioned, Dr. Edie, it's bioaccumulation. They are vessels of whatever is happening in the lagoon system. So, saying that you're taking a gamble on what you're eating, out in the wild, yes, that's true. We have no idea until we take a fish to Bridget and we get an analysis of what is actually in these fish to determine whether this is safe and as intended or normal, or, hey, there's something seriously wrong with this right now. So no, I'm with you. I would not take that gamble. As much as I like eating black drum once a year, once in a blue moon, maybe one time. Sure, they may taste the same now as they did 10 years ago, but I would be much more apprehensive. And I think it's important that the findings that you can share with us and as fishermen would help people see things differently. Because I think that the culture of fishermen and their view of nature being the one to just fix everything naturally without any intervention is, overlooking the fact that we have been a major player in this for the past 10 plus years, or way longer. But in the past 10, we've seen a critical change of what's happening, at least in the Indian River system. And Joe, you mentioned everywhere. So, we should acknowledge that it might be at a point where we would need to step back in and help repair and help this process, to recover, to go back to the days of old that people love to say. But, serious action needs to be taken to be able to get to that point.
And I will say too, so part of our project is being able to go out and survey fishermen, just to be able to understand how much they are consuming, to better understand what we're facing. And we do have a number of citizen scientists that come in our lab and eat the fish from the Indian River Lagoon, and they're doing fine.
Still alive.
Yeah. I think and keep in mind that, our body has a lot of natural filtration itself to be able to protect us from anything that we may be consuming. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. I think we had talked about attaching the survey to this podcast as well. So hopefully people listening will go ahead and click on that and answer those questions for us. That'd be extremely helpful in our data collection. It kind of puts everything together.
Cool. Yeah, we'll have that survey in the show notes at saltstrong.com in /podcast, or if you're, depending on where you're listening or watching on YouTube or wherever, it'll all be back at Salt Strong. And YouTube will have the link for that. How else can we, as anglers or anyone who's just interested in helping, volunteer? What are you guys looking for? Money, volunteers, all the above?
I would say all of the above. I'm going to specifically talk about this fish project, just given the nature of the fact that we're on a fishing podcast. So the beauty about this project is the number of different ways that people can get involved. So as I mentioned, a big part of this is having fishermen donate their fish. And when they do that, we ask that it be legal and in size, and it be whole and frozen, because as I mentioned, we like to make use of the entire fish. And then we're just making sure that each fish is being processed the same way. And we do have a number of bait and tackle shops along the Indian River Lagoon that are currently acting as drop-off locations. So you can just walk in, tell them you have some fish from ORCA, and they'll let us know and we can go pick them up. The second way would be to come to one of our processing events. We have them here at our lab in Vero Beach. We also are hosting events in Titusville, and we hope to have some down in Martin County here soon in the future. And these processing events are pretty much dissection events. We're taking parts of the fillet, we're taking the gills, we're taking the liver and the stomach to be able to analyze everything we need. And then the last part would be further lab analyses. So in order to look at some of these pollutants I talked about, there's just some extra lab work that needs to be done. So citizen scientists can get involved in a number of ways for this project in particular. And there's more information on our website under Citizen Science Fish Monitoring.
And it's teamorca.org, right?
Yes. Yep.
Do you guys have any place where the public can see some of this pollution mapping? Is that available as well? Like on actual like map overlays?
Yeah, it's on our website.
Okay.
Every pollution map we've ever done is on our website, and we eventually hope to have the whole lagoon mapped, but we have to raise funding for any of these projects.
So cool. Dr. Edie, if you don't mind, I know offline we talked about offshore trawling, and that could probably be its own separate podcast. But do you mind kind of giving a teaser, because it's pertinent and it's happening now, and I'm willing to bet a lot of anglers are not even aware of it. Can you give the 30,000 foot view of what happened and then now what's being proposed?
Yeah, so back in the 1970s, scientists from Harbor Branch were surveying off the coast here for the first time and discovered these ivory tree corals called oculina, and mapped it all up along the length past Cape Canaveral. And at that time, soon after it was documented, they created a small portion of it that was a marine protected area. The rest of it was not protected. And then when they went back some years later, all of the rest of it was gone. It was rubble. It had just been turned to nothing. And that the original protected area, there was still standing coral. Well, this was a major portion of the finfish fishery, the snapper grouper, where there were just hundreds of them, because they'd come out of the lagoon and spawn on those coral heads. And the incredible thing is that, having seen the decimation caused by this bottom trawling, which was just for rock shrimp, so a very small fishery compared to the finfish fishery, decimating this habitat for the finfish fishery. And now they've just passed the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council just passed Amendment 10, which is going to open up a portion of that area for trawling again. And there was some evidence of the coral larvae coming, and settling on the rubble and starting to grow. It grows very, very slowly. It was going to take a very long time, but at least there was some hope of recovery. Well, now there will be none. So they've passed Amendment 10. And the thing that's crazy about this is that one or more members of the South Atlantic Fishery Management Council, which is supposedly there to protect the coral reef, are rock shrimp fishers. So this is the fox watching the hen house. And I think the finfish fishery should be getting a say in this, because snapper and grouper are a big deal. And to have wiped out their nursery and then want to keep wiping it out even further makes no sense at a time when, everybody's talking about we need more protected areas.
Yeah, I think any average human can look at that and say something is wrong. Like follow the vote to the money trail of that's nuts. I mean, that's absolutely nuts.
It's absolutely nuts. And the thing is that this is a case study that needs to be publicized, because so often this has happened in all of these undersea gardens that have just been decimated with bottom trawling, but nobody ever sees it. So it's out of sight and out of mind. Yeah. But because of the work that John Reed at Harbor Branch did in the early days, we have the original video of what this looked like, and the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of snapper and grouper, enormous fish swimming around these coral heads. And now it looks like a moonscape. So, just that imagery alone should be a gut punch for anybody that cares anything about our fisheries.
Well, thank you. I think we'll have to do a follow-up on that. So has this Amendment 10 or whatever, is this a done deal? Are they going to start trawling again, or is there a chance to?
Yeah, it was passed by the council, and so now it's gone back to NOAA. Her name is Coit. She's going to be the final word. Janet Coit, COIT. Is going to be the final say, apparently. And it looks like it might actually happen, which I'm gobsmacked.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get her email and we'll all start blowing her up. That's crazy.
She's head of NOAA Fisheries.
I think what's crazy is that we don't know this as fishermen. Like, it is not it's not publicized. Like, it's just not out there as common knowledge, so that's I'm without words too.
Cool. Bridget, any specific fish you mentioned that you guys are taking fish, any specific species you guys need?
I'm so glad you said that, because I realized I did not include that. So when it comes to fish, we specifically want fish from the Indian River Lagoon or adjacent waterways. So Lake Okeechobee, Lake Washington, the Stick Marsh, any of those contributing water bodies. We're particularly interested in fish that people are most likely to eat. So black drum, red drum, sheephead. There's more I could name, but we'll take anything. We've looked at catfish. We've even started to do some mullet, being able to analyze some bait fish as well. So we'll take anything, but we're really trying to focus in on the particular fish that people are most likely to consume in the first place.
Justin's really good at catching puffer fish and lizard fish, so maybe we'll send you a whole crate of.
I would be happy to donate.
We just got a southern puffer fish the other day, actually.
Nice. Someone will eat it. Oh, golly, too funny. All right, so everyone could go to teamorca.org, right? And then do you, in case they're there, do you have the same survey link there somewhere on the site?
We should, and we should have it on our Facebook page as well.
Okay, cool.
So we're trying to get as much feedback as we can, because like I said, it kind of puts the whole picture together.
Is anything else that we can be doing to rally the troops, and besides sharing this episode with everyone and just getting more awareness, anything else? Any big events coming up in particular?
So we've got a few specifically for this fish processing event. So next week, on the 3rd, we will actually be having a processing and intro event here in our Vero lab. And then March 30th, I believe, at 6 p.m., we are going to have an update about this project. And that's open to anyone who might be interested in all of those different variables I previously talked about. It'll just kind of show you up to this point what we've seen, because we've done about over 600 fish at this point. So we've got a good bit of data. But again, This is over 2 years, so we're hoping to be able to keep going and collect more fish. But March 30th will be that update about this project.
Cool. Awesome. We'll put a link to that as well. Both of you guys, thank you so much. And I know you have a massive, group of team and volunteers and a lot of people behind this. So thanks to everyone who's, you guys are going there round the clock. It looks like full time and putting a lot of money and resources into saving the lagoon and hopefully bringing it back. I don't know if it'll be back to the way it was, in the 1930s, but just stopping this, what we would say, it seems like every year, right, Justin, our club keeps growing and every year people are like, man, the lagoon just keeps getting worse and worse. At least just stopping it and slowly reversing it back would be massive, massive win. So thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cool. All right, everyone, check out their site, teamorca.org, and we will have all the links to everything we talked about, including the survey and all the fish studies, and all that will be at saltshore.com. You can go up to the top under the fishing tips section, or you can go to saltshore.com/podcast, and you'll see that episode right there at the top. And at the bottom of the actual blog post /link, there's an area where you can post a question, and it'll come to me or Justin directly, and then we could forward it on if you have anything specific that we missed or that we just somehow forgot to talk about. But we covered a lot. I got some cool notes here, and let's get rid of that black mayonnaise on the bottom as fast as we can. That is so gross. All right, guys, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul.